Greetings, fellow saints. Glad that you could join us again for our weekly Torah portion for Latter-day Saints, the Go Follow Yeshua or Acts 15 podcast. My name is Joshua, and I'm here with Elior. And this week we are going over the second Torah portion, which is called Noach. So, Noach is the Hebrew name, which in English is
Noah.
Noah. So Noah, this is the patriarch Noah. And this starts exactly where the previous Torah portion stopped. So the Torah portions, just to say, they actually cover the entire Torah. Although I mentioned at the beginning of the last episode about the Haftarah or the prophet readings, those do not actually cover all of the prophets. They only cover, portions of them that kind of reminded the ancient Jews about the Torah portions. But the Torah portions themselves, they do cover the entire five books of Moses. So we're picking up in, Genesis chapter 6, starting at verse 9. And I'll just read that there, this first verse. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. Now, the structure of this verse is a little bit odd because it says these are the generations of Noah. So you're thinking we're about ready to hear Noah's children, right? And later on, you can see, stuff like this. Give you an example in chapter 11, which is what this Torah portion goes through. Um, through the end of chapter 11, it says, "Now these are this is verse 27. These are the generations of Terah, Terah being the father of Abraham. So these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot." So it just like goes right into his children. Now, the thing about children is children are a legacy. Children are a heritage. And so it's interesting that right off the bat, we learn that the generations or like the legacy of Noah, like the important thing that the scripture wants us to know about Noah is that he was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. So I just think I think that's a pretty good legacy that the scripture's painting there for Noah.
Can we I want to talk about him being perfect in his
Yeah,
generations.
please. Yeah, what does that mean?
That is very profound. One, it shows that perfection in a biblical sense, in a Hebraic sense, is possible. And I have heard somebody say, well, he had 600 years to do it. But no, 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 no. Even Yeshua, Jesus Christ says, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as I am."
Hmm.
So let's talk about the Hebraic definition of perfect. The Hebrew word for perfect is shalem or shalom, which you may have heard as a greeting, peace. That can also it also means perfect. And in the Hebraic notion of perfect is completeness, and it's relating to perfection in covenant relationship with God. So when we talk about being perfect like Noah, which is possible in this life, we're not talking about looking like a Roman sculpture
Hmm.
or giving up your humanity, being this dull, having this dull, perfect character, quote
Yeah,
unquote.
robot.
But yeah, to be a robot, exactly. We're talking about covenant completeness with God and with man. Loving God and loving your fellow man and fulfilling the measure of your creation.
Okay, so those are the first children of Noah mentioned there. But it also mentions the next verse, Noah begat three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, it's interesting, the Genesis doesn't go much more than that, but we have in the Joseph Smith translation, or the JST, I'll just say, a little bit more information about those sons, and this is going to be important later on. And Noah was 450 years old and begat Japheth. And 42 years afterwards, he begat Shem, of her who was the mother of Japheth. And when he was 500 years old, he begat Ham. So the text goes uh, out of its way to explicitly say that Shem and Japheth had the same mother, and then Ham was also begotten, which to me is a hint at least that Ham probably was from a different mother. So whether Noah had another wife or um, whether uh, a wife died or something, either way, I think that Ham was from a different mother than the other two brothers.
I don't see any other reason why Joseph would include that phrase
Yeah,
and Noah had Shem from her who was the mother of Japheth. I mean,
right.
that and then just to kind of throw Ham in at the end there, that to me that's pretty clear that it was
Pretty
a
interesting.
different mother.
Yeah. Now this is not to throw any shade on Ham yet. Anyway, we later on we know that no spoilers here, but this was written a long time ago,
Yeah.
so it seems like so that. But yeah, Ham becomes the villain, right?
Yeah.
Um, but at this point, the JST also adds that all three of these sons also walked with God, with Noah, like they were righteous men.
At this point, yeah, even Ham was a just man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't have the reference, but the Book of Jasher, which I'm a pretty big fan of, also mentions this, or like hints at least at this detail that we find in the JST, that Ham was from a different mother, or very likely from a different mother. Okay. Um, so it says God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. It says that the earth was filled with violence. I mentioned last week that word in Hebrew is Hamas, which is pretty interesting,
Yeah.
um, especially considering like the news, right? What's going on in the news?
Mhm.
It says the earth was corrupt, all flesh had been corrupted, and that the earth was filled with Hamas. So those are kind of the two things he said. Now, a lot of this corruption, I believe, is the corruption that the Nephilim brought, the fallen angels and their children, the giants. And we're not going to get into too much detail about that, but I think that this corruption, I do believe that this corruption was of two kinds, that there was a, like a moral corruption and also
Biologic.
a biological corruption. And it says all flesh. So I think that this corruption extended beyond human corruption, like the corruption of the human genome or whatever, but went into corruption of other living things as well.
Aren't there apocryphal or pseudepigraphal accounts of them crossbreeding animals and
Yeah, all
wait,
kinds of yeah,
experiments and
yeah.
that is against Torah, which we'll end
That
up
is,
covering.
yes, that's right. Actually, that's one of the things I wanted to kind of point out um, in this Torah portion is the fact that these ancient people who lived well before Moses' time are actually keeping laws that are found in the Torah, found in the commandments given at Mount Sinai.
Right. When it comes to all the patriarchs who lived before Moses, they seem to have all kept Torah.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to read just a brief little bit from the Book of Mormon. This is in Alma chapter 12.
One of the best in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, are some pretty good chapters. Alma and Amulek are
12 and 13 are precious.
yeah precious, plain and precious things. It's interesting. So Amulek is, or Alma rather, is explaining about the fall and about Adam and Eve, and mentions that God had given them first commandments, first set of commandments. Let's see. This is in verse 31. Wherefore he gave commandments unto men. Well, let me see. Let me back up. Hmm. Uh, well, that's okay. I'll just continue there, actually. Wherefore he, God, gave commandments unto men. These are Alma is saying he gave them a second set of commandments. Okay, new commandments. He gave commandments unto men, they having first transgressed the first commandments as to things which were temporal. So he's talking about the partaking of the forbidden fruit. Okay, partaking of the forbidden fruit, cast out. And then it says there that God gave them like a new set of commandments to start keeping now that they were in the
The
world
world.
and the plan was like rolling out as planned. Okay. And we have this in the JST too. Like they leave the garden and God immediately says he starts giving them commandments, and among those are sacrifice. Like, and God commands Adam to sacrifice. That's one of the very first things, at least the commandments that we know about, which is interesting by itself because, well, I'll come back to that in a minute. But okay, continuing on in verse 31 here of Alma 12. They having transgressed the first commandments as to things which were temporal, and becoming as gods knowing good from evil. Okay. Verse 32. Therefore God gave unto them commandments after having made known unto them the plan of redemption, that they should not do evil, the penalty thereof being a second death. Okay. And he talks about righteousness and redemption and justice and so on. And and then going down to verse 36, and now, my brethren, behold, I say unto you, that if ye will harden your hearts, ye shall not enter into the rest of the Lord. Therefore your iniquity provoketh him, that he sendeth down his wrath upon you, as in the first provocation, yea, according to his word, in the last provocation, as well as the first, to the everlasting destruction of your souls. Therefore, according to his word, unto the last death, as well as the first. And now, my brethren, seeing that we know these things, and they are true, let us repent and harden not our hearts, that we provoke not the Lord our God to pull down his wrath upon us in these his second commandments, which he has given unto us. But let us enter into the rest of God, which is prepared according to his word.
Whoa. The implications are huge. I'll let you explain
Yeah,
that.
so the implication is Alma, of course, and you can, if you have an LDS edition of the Book of Mormon, you look down at the bottom there and it says it's about 82 BC. So no one um, argues that Alma and Amulek had any other law than what we would call the law of Moses,
Torah,
Torah.
the five books of Moses.
Yeah, that is the law that they had. And Alma is saying, let us not pull the wrath of God down upon us in these the second commandments that he has given to us. In other words, he's saying, these commandments that we have, these are the second set of commandments that God gave to Adam.
After partaking of the fruit and being cast out.
Yes,
Yeah, so that this is a direct equating of Torah given at Sinai and what was given to Adam and Eve and the patriarchs that followed after them. The
absolutely.
same law. And again, in I think either every instance in scripture or nearly, the patriarchs were keeping Torah. We're keeping laws that were later found in Torah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So I have, some examples. We didn't talk about it last time, but I'll just, since we're kind of on this, I'll mention it now. We're going to say something.
yeah, I just want to say in our last episode when we read the first Torah portion or worked through it, I mentioned that Adam and Eve are sent out of the garden to order the world. Ordering the world is pulling heaven down to earth, reestablishing or helping God reestablish his presence on earth. You need commandments, you need law to create order. And this isn't
Yeah.
rigid tyrannical order. This is things functioning in harmony, light, life, joy, fulfilling the measure of their creation. You need law to accomplish this. So this just jives with what you just read in Alma 12
Okay.
about them receiving a second set of commandments.
Yeah. Well, it just goes along with the ideas that we have that are expressed like repeatedly throughout the canon, that God is eternal and unchanging, and he is not capricious, and he's also not, he's not a failure. He's not on plan C, D, or E, right? This is plan A, has always been plan A. And God just keeps, um, God has the same plan. And whether or not the people respond, that's apostasy on their part. But God's not changing his ideas about how things are supposed to be done.
Let's remember this. We're going to get into the everlasting covenant later in this discussion. It's directly related to everything we've just talked about the last few minutes.
Okay, I love it. So here's an example. So yeah, we have in the JST that God commands Adam to start offering sacrifices, which is a thing that's usually usually if people are literate, like they know that sacrifices happened prior to Moses, but usually I think when people think about animal sacrifice, they associate it or equate it with the law of Moses,
Right.
right? But in
Given
fact,
given at Sinai. Yeah.
correct. Yes, right. So, but we have in aside from the JST, the earliest mention that we have, and we talked about this last time, the earliest mention we have of animal sacrifice is Abel. Cain and Abel, they offer their sacrifices. Abel's is, of course, an animal sacrifice. And it's interesting, though, that, and this is kind of a small detail that people don't pick up on, but in Genesis chapter 4, verse 4, it says, and Abel, he also brought the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. So there's that weird little detail. He brought the first thing of his flock and the fat of the animal. Like that's not a thing that people usually think of. That's like never depicted in children's stories or whatever. But
True.
if, it's interesting because this is exactly what the way that God commands sacrifices to be given. In Numbers chapter 18, for example, is talking about the firstlings, and it says the firstlings of a this is Numbers 18, like verse 15 and 17. But the firstling of a cow, or the firstling of a sheep, or the firstling of a goat, thou shalt not redeem. They are holy. Thou shalt sprinkle their blood upon the altar, and shalt burn their fat for an offering made by fire, for a sweet savor unto the Lord.
Hmm.
So how did Abel know that he was supposed to bring the firstlings, as it says, and bring the fat also of his firstlings in the same way that it says in Numbers chapter 18, when Numbers chapter 18 wasn't for, thousands of years after Abel lived. Well, uh, the the Torah that God gave to Moses was not a new revelation; it was a restoration.
A
When
renewal.
I say new, yeah, it was a renewal. That's right. Yeah, because it is we believe as saints, as Latter-day Saints, we believe in the new and everlasting covenant. And the
Yes.
only way for a covenant to be new and everlasting is if we understand that new actually means renewed.
Renewed. Every single dispensation is a renewal of the covenant made with Adam. The Adamic dispensation,
Yeah.
Enochian,
Amen.
Abrahamic, Mosaic, Christian, and Latter-day dispensations are all a renewal of the same covenant. And Torah is a part of that renewal through Moses. And that's Torah is relevant to us for that fact alone. At the very least, it is a renewal of the same covenant, and we want to participate in that covenant. And Torah is extremely relevant in that context.
Right. Now, again, the Torah that we have in the Bible, that's what we were calling the stone tablets.
Hmm.
But we have to remember that the original was the sapphire tablets, which contained the stuff that we have in the Bible, plus the stuff that Joseph revealed. So now we actually have we have essentially the information that was in the sapphire tablets again. Well, if we combine the Melchizedek stuff and with the sealings and endowments and all of those things, along with the five books of Moses that we have now, that together is the sapphire tablets.
Essentially, to simplify it, the five books of Moses plus the Melchizedek temple rites equal the sapphire tablets.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the fullness of the restoration.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, or the fullness of the covenant, I guess.
Right.
Okay. So, so God says to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me." Okay, and He commands Noah to build an ark. He says, "Make it of gopher wood," right? And there's some really interesting things about this ark. Of course, this ark it's huge, and it's going to contain Noah, his family, and also all the animals are going to be in there with Noah and his family, his three sons and their wives, right? The interesting things about this arc is that there is a lot of temple symbolism, temple imagery in the ark. And I think you could say that the ark itself was a temple.
Absolutely.
and we'll go over kind of some evidences of that. But just to kind of wet the whistle, I guess, um, it is the the floor plan of the ark, right? The surface area, I guess, of each floor. There's three floors for one, so it is a three-part space. There's three levels,
Just
which
like any other temple,
yeah,
it's a three-part space.
right. Okay, and we would obviously associate those with telestial, terrestrial, and celestial. Okay, and then it says that the footprint is 300 cubits. Let's see, 300 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits. Um, so, and this footprint is actually like proportionally like the same as the Ark of the Covenant, which is interesting. And the other interesting thing about the Ark compared to the temple, the tabernacle and the temple, is that in the Bible, at least, these are the only things that God gives instructions of how to build. Like he says, God gives Moses instructions about the tabernacle, and God gives Moses instructions about building the ark to Noah. And so that's kind of an unusual um, detail. And we were talking before, there are some other, in our kind of broader restoration scriptures, there are some other places where God gives instructions about how to build things.
Hmm.
And those are other ships.
Nephi ship and the Jaredite barges, which also are associated with some temple imagery, funnily enough. So, in total, if we're going to have the Bible and Book of Mormon, we have five structures total that God gave specific instructions for in terms of the building of these things. And there are temple themes and temple elements in all of these structures.
Yeah. It's interesting with the water, with the ships, that they're always associated with the number eight.
Yeah,
So with Noah, there's eight souls, right? And like Peter draws upon that imagery in the New Testament and like connects it to baptism. And then with the Jaredite barges, there was actually eight of them.
8 barges.
Eight barges, yeah.
So 8 souls on Noah's Ark, 8 Jaredite barges.
Yeah, and this is obviously there's like baptism symbolism connected with this, right?
Right.
And then with the Nephi ship, they're in the wilderness for 8 years, and then they are and then they build a ship and cross the waters to the New World. So
Yeah. Can we talk about the ships real quick?
yeah,
Um, this is pretty crazy. So we talked about in our last episode how uh, the advent of Adam and Eve in the garden and the whole creation narrative is a recreation. It is not the beginning, it is a beginning, right? In a beginning.
right,
This is the exact same thing. This is a recreation, a new beginning.
yeah,
And one of the oldest variants of the creation story is the story about the cosmic egg. Do you know about this?
no,
Okay. In let me read
but
it.
I can visualize this already. Like because the ark is like the garden.
Yes, the Ark is Eden. The Ark is
The
the
ark is
holy
Eden.
Holy of Holies. It's the third space in any temple. It's the celestial world, the Holy of Holies, Eden,
Hmm.
the womb.
Hmm.
If you know, yes. So in West Africa, China, India, Japan, Finland, Egypt, Greece, Italy, and Iran, and all of those countries in ancient times, part of their creation story had to do with a cosmic egg floating in the primordial waters of chaos,
Wow.
and then it hatches, and it contains the ingredients of all creation, and all creation just emanates from that egg, and everything is ordered, and so what is going on here with Noah's
I will never eat egg drop soup the same way again.
It'll be a cosmic experience every
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
Funny enough, I love egg drop soup, and I haven't had it in years, so
Okay.
we're gonna have to fix that. But so Noah's Ark is the cosmic egg. This is the
Absolutely.
Hebraic variant of the cosmic egg creation story. Within Noah's Ark, you have all the animals, the seeds, and the humans, and
Yeah.
God. All the elements of creation exist in this ark, which is as you said, the a temple space, specifically the third highest space of the temple. But it doesn't stop there. We mentioned the Jaredite barges and
Yeah.
Nephi's ship. Those are also creation stories. They contain the ingredients for creation. They are temple spaces. They contain the seeds, the
Yeah, they
animals.
specifically said they brought these other elements with them.
Yeah,
Feed and the animals, right?
they also brought honey,
And bees. Yeah.
bees. I wish we had time to talk about this. Maybe
You're a beekeeper.
I'm an amateur beekeeper. Let me, should I just talk about bees real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So bees are interesting. Again, real quick, the Jaredite barges and Nephi ship are also these cosmic eggs from which creation springs forth.
Hmm.
These are all creation narratives. Bees are interesting. Bees belong in the third space of the temple, and I'll explain why. The third space of the temple in ancient Israel is called the Debir, which means oracle. It comes from the word debar, which means word, because the oracle or the words of God come from the Holy of Holies, the
Hmm.
Debir. Well, the name for bees in Hebrew is Deborah, Deborah in English.
Right.
Um, there's a connection here that the Deborah belong in the Debir,
Yes, that's
and
a wordplay.
it's a word play. And funny enough, the almond tree, which is the tree of life in ancient Israel, in many apocalyptic texts, which are ascension texts where a prophet ascends to the throne of God and encounters God, um, that's where the tree of life is often, at the top of the mount in the third space.
Hmm.
The tree of life in ancient Israel was an almond tree, and almond trees require honeybees for their survival. There is an intimate connection between
Hmm.
honeybees and almond trees. Without honeybees, you cannot have almond trees.
Interesting.
So these
Pollinators,
bees,
yeah.
yeah, they're exactly for pollination. These bees are descending from the third space, going into the world, gathering the nectar from the world,
Oh, yeah.
and going back to the third space, the Debir. Well, what is the nectar? The bees are the prophets. They're going out from the Holy of Holies from God's presence into the world to gather the nectar, the righteous human beings. And they're bringing that nectar back to God.
Hmm.
So,
I mean, these these analogies are just like multi-layered.
yeah,
But I usually when I think, and I'm not saying this is wrong, this is just like another layer maybe. When I think of God and like harvesting, like I think of fruit as the people,
yes,
like in Zenos's allegory, whatever this was, olives, but
clear connection here.
um, so olives not almonds or fruit or whatever, but yeah, but like, but in order for fruit to grow, like it needs to be pollinated,
Yeah,
and this pollination, can happen at least, by the agency of heavenly messengers.
which are the prophets or angels, right? And
Yeah.
and there's a connection between fruit and flowers and nectar. The point being, the nectar, if you liken righteous people who listen to the prophets and yield to God, if you liken them unto good fruit, they also can be likened unto nectar, right?
Hmm.
And the bees, the prophets, are bringing them back to the Holy of Holies, to the presence of God, and they're all sharing in that delicious honey together, I
Yeah.
guess.
Amazing.
But anyway,
Ambrosia.
ambrosia, yeah.
Huh.
But anyway, the bees, there's a reason that both Nephi and the Jaredites are said to have brought bees in their cosmic egg barges. That's all.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now there's another connection, which is the window.
Oh yes, the window in Noah's Ark.
Yeah. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So in Genesis 6:16, Noah describes how, well, Noah is given instructions for building a window in the
Yeah.
ark.
That's right.
Now, I'll just say this. Noah had a lot of livestock in the ark, and the window that is described in Genesis 6:16 is absolutely inadequate for ventilation for
For
the ark.
ventilation.
It would have been impossible. It's not even, it's laughable to think that that window was
Hmm.
sufficient for all of the livestock and other creatures in the ark. The word that is translated into window could be more accurately translated into precious stone or light.
Hmm.
So that word for window is called, it's sohar.
Okay.
It could be translated as precious stone or light instead of window.
A
This
light-giving stone.
right, a light-giving stone.
Hmm.
This window is clearly not meant for ventilation. Sohar is not used later when Noah is sending doves through windows.
Hmm.
That's not the same word for window.
Interesting.
This is a unique word. It only appears a few times in the Old Testament.
Um, but ventilation is air flow.
Sure.
And if we're talking about a revelatory device, like the inspiration or something, I mean, we use in English we use the word inspiration to mean both uh, to breathe in air,
Oh yeah.
you inspire,
Right.
and expiration is to breathe out, but also to mean like spiritual communication.
Inspiration.
Right.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So if it's for ventilation to get ruach or something, right?
To get the spirit.
Spirit, yeah, which is
It,
wind, right, or air.
so it's spiritual. So this precious glowing stone is used for spiritual ventilation.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the point is this window that the Lord has Noah build.
And this like reminds me. This is clearly like a echoed in the Jaredite story,
Ex
at
That's
least, right?
exactly what I was going to say. There is a clear connection here. The Jaredites have glowing precious stones in their barges.
Mm-hmm.
Noah has a quote window or a glowing precious stone in his barge.
Interesting.
So,
Can I mention one more connection to Eden?
yeah.
Um, and this is not explicit in Genesis, but this story is found in other places in other like apocryphal texts in the Book of Jubilees, and it's hinted out at throughout Genesis, but excuse me, it's this idea that the garment that was given to Adam was actually passed down father to son until it comes into the hands of Noah, and Noah actually receives the garment that was given to Adam in the garden, or as they were leaving the garden, while he was in the garden, I guess I should say, in preparation for going out into the lone and dreary world. And according to the stories, the ancient Jewish stories and the apocryphal stories, when Noah would wear this garment, then the animals would all become docile. And the reason that was given is because they could smell the quote the scent of paradise was still
Oh,
on the garment.
interesting.
And obviously, this would be a very useful thing when you're trying to subdue an ark full of animals to wear the robe that was originally Adam's, and Adam was given dominion over everything, right?
Yeah,
And like wearing this robe was like a symbol of that, but also there was like an actual effect that this robe had on all the animals.
that's
So
amazing.
yeah,
So it's not just an emblem of
so there's like so this is again just Noah as Adam in this Eden, which contains the animals and the seeds. Um,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Noah is clearly the new Adam, just as Lehi was, and Jared and the brother of Jared were.
yeah,
So,
amazing. Okay, there's more that we could say about, but I think we should move on. I want to say this was, and you mentioned this. This is actually part of that. So this is a continuation, but of this theme here. But at the beginning of chapter 7. It reads, verse 1, And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. So, really cool because you can actually tell from the grammar where the Lord is when he says this. Because we probably imagine, if we were drawing a storybook, we would probably imagine like God up in heaven.
he's in the sky.
Yeah,
So,
telling Noah to go in the ark, but the grammar is actually God says to Noah, "Come into the ark," meaning God is in the ark.
come to me,
Come to me
to
in the ark.
Eden.
Yes, to Eden. That's right. And Adam walked with God in Eden, right? In the cool,
Mhm.
like God was there, and God was inside the ark. And actually, um, I will say two more verses here. Um, Noah and all the animals, like they load up. Okay. And then in verse 16 of chapter 7, it actually says that the Lord shut the door. And we know that the Lord was on the inside, so I don't know, the Lord grabbed the rope or whatever and pulled up the drawbridge, so to speak, right? And then the Lord shut himself in there with Noah and his family and all the animals and sat there with his new the new Adam in this new Eden, while the world was tohu vavohu, right? Well, it was covered with waters, just like it was at the beginning of Genesis, right?
Yeah.
Before, like in Genesis, the waters covered everything, and then the dry land appears, and the plants start to grow, and then the animals are put there, and then man,
And this is
right?
a repeat.
This is a repeat of all of that,
And tohu vavohu translates as form and without void, which there's destruction connotations.
right? Yeah. Now the Genesis chapter 7 doesn't use that term,
But yeah,
but the imagery is the same as it
yes,
was in Genesis
the
1.
waters of chaos have, overcome the earth and
Yeah. So it's interesting then, skipping over to uh, skipping over to 8, chapter 8, verse 16. We have this same kind of imagery here where God tells Noah that it's time to disembark. But again, the Lord doesn't call Noah out. He doesn't say, Noah, come out of the ark. He actually says, Noah, go forth, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. Like,
so
so the Lord is again with them in the ark,
in both
which is just
instances,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, the Lord is placed in the ark within the linguistic context in both instances.
Yeah.
That's pretty
It's
awesome.
amazing. Now, quiz for you.
Hmm.
How many, how many, how many of each animal are in the ark?
A pair of each unclean animal,
Okay.
then seven pairs of each clean animal.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. And a lot of storybooks kind of
Just have two by two,
two
right?
by two. Yeah. Now it does say two by two. It says they went into the ark two by two. But that is not a contradiction. That is actually just explaining how they like went up the ramp.
Each pair.
Yeah.
But clean animals we'll cover more in depth later into Torah.
Yeah, what those are.
But point being, one pair of each unclean animal, seven pairs of each clean animal.
Yeah, why do you suppose Noah would have like extra clean animals?
So they could eat food.
Yeah, because a lot of people think they had clean animals for no reason.
It's
Like
like, dude,
no,
guys got to eat.
no, Moses is writing this, okay? And I do believe that Moses is writing this from previous records, the Genesis part of the five books of
Yeah,
Moses.
absolutely. This is a collection that he had or that he was aware of for
Yeah,
somehow.
right. Yeah. Passed down like again, the JST says the records began with Adam,
Right.
and those were passed down to Abraham, and then Abraham was the father of Isaac, Jacob, and then they were right there, and then Moses is an Israelite.
Interestingly enough, Moses was a Levite. He wasn't from Joseph or Judah, which kind of held prominence. But who did he go to when he was cast out of Egypt?
Yeah,
Jethro.
Yitro, yeah,
Yitro. And Yitro, Jethro, was a descendant of who?
Abraham.
So I'm wondering if those records came through Jethro, because Moses is a Levite. He's not,
Uh,
you know.
yeah, that's interesting. Uh, or at least a copy of them.
Right. I guess there's
I don't know if there needs to be a yeah.
yeah, never mind. There does not need to be a single copy of each of these
But
records.
yeah, but you bring up a really good point because, and this is a distinct possibility. I mean, we have in our Doctrine and Covenants that Moses receives the priesthood from Jethro,
The
who
high
is a high
priest.
priest.
Yeah, like literally the Melchizedek priesthood, right?
Right. Yeah, he's the high priest of Midian, but he's a legit high priest. Meanwhile, the Israelites, um, I don't know that you could say they were apostate, but they were enslaved.
Right. Well, which is a
They were not in a position, yeah, which is a covenant curse, right?
covenant curse, which means they had likely fallen into wickedness because slavery is a covenant curse.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, amen to that. So then when Moses goes out, he interfaces with Jethro and is taught by him and goes into the mountain and has the burning bush experience. We'll get to this later, I guess, but I think that's a good possibility that some of those records. or copies of them at least, were actually in Jethro's hands.
Yeah.
And then this is just speculative. This is you heard it here first, folks. Like,
If
yeah,
there's some discovery and it turns
yeah.
out that we were right,
They find an ancient Midianite copy of the Torah.
oh man, that'd be
Yeah.
crazy.
Okay. So yeah, Moses receives um, the records that contain the substance of Genesis from Jethro,
Cool
and
theory.
yeah, so maybe who knows? Okay. Um, okay. So chapter 9. Um, well, of course, God. Okay. So Genesis says that the flood started in the second month of the year. It specifically mentions, and then it gives some length of time, and then the flood waters basically are abated on the first month of the following year, and then Noah waits for a little while in the ark. Still, he waits another month and a half ish for because the waters are have receded, but everything's still like sloppy, muddy. And also there's probably not really vegetation and stuff that's growing. So he waits for a month and a half ish, and then everything's ready the ground is dry and there's grass growing. And then he goes out. So in like the middle of the second month. And and then we know Moses does things. He plants a vineyard and he offers sacrifice and all of that. And Genesis doesn't say, but in the book of Jubilees, it actually does say specifically that uh, when Noah, offers sacrifices, that it's like in the beginning of the third month. And then a few days later, God like speaks to him and gives him this covenant that God will not, not destroy the earth again, and it gives the rainbow as the sign of the covenant, the token of the covenant. And um, the Book of Jubilees ties this specifically to Shavuot, which is very interesting because this is the same time of year. This is the same festival at which the covenant is given at Mount Sinai to Moses and the Israelites. So this is like God's covenant making day,
Shavuot, which is the Feast of Weeks
also known as the Feast of Weeks, yeah, in English.
or Pentecost.
Pentecost. That's right.
So we're talking about one of the Hebrew holy days that we'll explore in depth later, but also it is manifest in the New Testament after the resurrection.
Right. Yeah. And it's actually manifested in restoration scripture even before Moses as well. Again, in the JST, in the book of Moses, it talks about that this covenant of the rainbow and that God will visit his people um, and not utterly destroy them, but God will be a savior. This covenant is actually given to Enoch first, at
Right.
least first that we have record of it. And I have no doubt that this was also when God gave it to Enoch, that it was on Shavuot as well.
If it's yeah, that if the Shavuot connection or the Pentecost connection is that strong everywhere else,
Yeah,
why would it not be at that time for Enoch too?
right.
And again, this at this point in the scripture, it specifically mentions the everlasting covenant given to Noah. Again, this is a renewal of the covenant given to Enoch, which was a renewal of the covenant given to Adam.
Yeah,
And the covenant we have received, the covenant that early Christians received, it's a renewal of that same covenant.
yeah. I'll just mention one more Pentecost connection, like to the restoration. And it's like I believe we won't go into detail about this, but I do believe that the Melchizedek priesthood was restored. Peter, James, and John visited Joseph Smith on Shavuot.
Right, because we don't know the exact time that Peter, James, and John appeared to Joseph. There was no journal entry kept.
Right.
There was no date ever transcribed.
But we do know that it was like late May, early June.
Right. It was in the Pentecost or Shavuot window of that year.
That's right.
It's
Yeah,
it's been narrowed down to that small window.
that's right. Yeah, which is just amazing.
Hmm.
So, and just perfectly in keeping with God's ancient pattern.
Right.
So it's like it's a restoration.
revealing and restoring covenant
Yeah, amen.
in that time.
Okay, I do want to address one thing in chapter 9. So Noah disembarks, right? God tells Noah and his sons to be fruitful and multiply and
Replen
replenish the earth.
replenish.
Replenish. We talked about that last time, right?
Okay, Adam and Eve were told to replenish the earth.
Right. Same kind of language there.
Okay, why would it say replenish
Amazing,
if
huh?
the earth
Yeah.
had never been populated before?
Right. Okay.
That's a great observation.
Okay.
They're also given blessings of fertility and given dominion over wildlife at this point. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
which is a similar thing, right?
Similar blessing that was given to Adam,
Right.
and you mentioned that in certain uh, apocryphal accounts, or no, you had mentioned that Noah, because Noah possibly had that garment of Adam's, he had dominion over the wildlife on the ark. Well, specifically here in Genesis 9, the Lord tells Noah and his sons that they will have the same dominion over the wildlife that Adam had.
Yeah. So very cool. Okay. Now the next thing is going to be a kind of a controversial bit for Latter-day Saints. So I'm just going to read. Let's see. I'm going to start at verse 3 of chapter 9. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Now, there's actually, I am going to make a little caveat there. Every moving thing, um, the uh, the Hebrew word there is uh, OMS, if I remember that right. And it sounds like it's talking about every, like literally anything like lizards and rats and snakes and sheep and
Sure.
elephants or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but there are good arguments that this term is actually used to refer to clean animals only.
Okay.
Like just from the context in other places that it's used, where we can ferret out the meaning of that word, like it seems to be applied to clean animals.
So every clean moving thing is
Yeah,
what it means,
right.
or that's the clear connotation.
Yeah, and this actually matches with the fact that God tells them to take 7 pairs of all the clean animals.
Right.
And again, what for? Well, it's for 2 reasons, really. It's because those animals are, at least some of those are going to be sacrificed and some of those are going to be eaten, right? So, okay. So anyway, those things should be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things, but flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, ye shall ye not eat.
Mm,
So this is another kind of amazing thing. This actually ties to Acts 15, right? Because that was one of the commandments that the apostles said that the Gentile converts were supposed to keep was not to eat blood. Yeah, and that actually, again, so this is another example. This commandment is actually in Leviticus chapter 17. Um, and but here we find Noah like keeping Leviticus 17 thousands of years before Leviticus 17 was supposedly known about, right?
right. Keeping those second commandments that Adam and Eve had
That's exactly right.
received.
Yeah, and which Alma and Amulek say those second commandments are what's
What the
contained in
what
in the Pentateuch.
and what the Nephites are keeping because they're Israelites.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And surely your blood of your lives will I require at the hand of every beast will I require it. And at the hand of man, and at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. Okay, now the the, the reading of the account that we have in Genesis is interesting, and the JST is different. So I want to kind of explain both of them. So in Genesis here it says, "Surely your blood of your lives will I require at the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man." What this verse 5 is saying is this is actually commanding capital punishment, basically saying, and it's commanding capital punishment not only of a man killing another man, but also of a beast killing a man. And this is actually, again, this is a law that's also found in Torah. It's in Exodus. Whereas, if a dog, and we do this now too. If a dog is roaming free and goes into someone's yard and kills a toddler,
It's put down.
we put down that dog, right? And the examples given in Exodus are like if there's an ox and it gores someone and kills them, like we kill the ox. We don't let them live.
I actually had no idea that that was what that meant. So what it's saying is you shall not eat blood. And then it says
Because blood is holy.
because blood, the life is in the blood,
Yeah,
which I want to talk about in a sec. But it's saying you shall not eat blood, you and your sons. And if an animal or a man kills a man, you're going to kill the animal or the man that killed,
that's right.
basically.
Yep,
Wow.
that's right.
So the animal part of that, I didn't realize that that's what that was saying. You need to put the animal down.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It says, "I will require, I will require your blood at the hand of every beast."
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna read chapter 9 of the JST, starting at verse 3. It's here. It was a verse 9 in the JST. But every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But the blood of all flesh, which I have given you for meat, shall be. So this is actually interesting. He says, "The blood of all flesh, which I have given you for meat," meaning clean animals, right?
Right.
The blood of all flesh, which I have given you for meat, like the things that you can eat, shall.
The things which I have given you for meat,
Yeah,
as opposed to the things he has not given them for meat.
right. Yeah.
Clean animals.
Not all animals are food,
Okay.
right? Okay, the blood of all flesh which I have given you for meat, that's a JST edition, shall be shed upon the ground, which taketh the life thereof. And the blood ye shall not eat. Okay, so that's similar, but there is actually a little correction there, which strengthens the idea about the clean animals. And surely blood shall not be shed only for meat to save your lives, and the blood of every beast will I require at your hands. Okay, and whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. Man shall not shed the blood of a man. Okay, and it goes on there. It talks about the men being made in the image of God. But verse uh, verse 5 here, it sounds like it's saying that you should not eat meat. It says, "Blood shall not be shed only for meat to save your lives, and the blood of every beast will I require at your hands." So the blood of every beast will I require at your hands. It sounds like there's going to be like a price to be paid, like a punishment. Like you can eat meat in an emergency situation, maybe, but uh, but uh, but if it's not an emergency situation, then then that's going to be stripes on your back, right? With you, have you heard that interpretation before?
Yeah, and I was actually vegetarian for several years because of that verse, that false interpretation of that verse. I would say that is a clearly out of context interpretation of that verse,
It is
paired with the word of wisdom. So I was vegetarian for several years because of that.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, like before that, in verse 4, um, he says, "There's flesh that I have given you for meat." I
Exactly.
gave it you to do
Yeah.
it, but it does say, blood shall not be shed except for meat to save your lives. And I think to save your life, I don't think that necessarily means like you are starving to death.
Yeah.
I think this means to keep you living.
To keep you living.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um, and it says blood shall not be shed except for meat. That means for food. Like, so God is not pleased with um, sport killing.
Right.
Okay.
Trophy hunting.
Trophy hunting. Right. Unless you're eating it too.
Sure.
Right. But yeah. but you shouldn't be doing that with a rhinoceros because you're not
Right.
supposed to eat that. So yeah, God will not be pleased with that. But okay, so and then what does it mean? The blood of every beast will I require at your hands. Well, I think that we can just interpret that not as a punishment, but it's just reiterating what was said in the previous verse, which is the requirement that if you shed blood of an animal to eat, that you're supposed to shed the blood upon the ground and not to eat it. And so that is the requirement that is supposed to be done with the blood. So I think that God's saying when He says, "I'll require the blood of every animal at your hands," it means pour it out on the ground, like I've said. And this is also is actually um, a is reflected later on in Leviticus. I want to say 17, where the requirement is repeated that anytime you kill any animal, that the blood goes in the ground,
Right.
and you return it to the ground.
And
So,
this is a principle called vitalism that the ancients held to. I mean,
okay,
it's in the scriptures. Vitalism is taught in the scriptures, and even the early Latter-day Saints believed in vitalism. And vitalism just means that the life force is in the blood. So blood is sacred because of that, right? Blood is holy. And when you consume blood, that's barbaric.
right.
To consume life force, that's not
Mm,
good.
mm.
Actually, it reminds me of the Mahon principle, which we covered last episode, converting life into money or into gain in some way.
So, after Noah and his sons disembark, and all of the animals as well, then they begin to live their lives, and they begin to multiply and replenish the earth. It's interesting in Genesis chapter 9, verse 18, that it says the sons of Noah that went forth from the ark. And it's weird because it says Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. So like lists Canaan along with the sons of Noah for some reason, and the other descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth are not really mentioned, kind of as though they were like connected to the list of Noah's sons. I think that's um, significant for what comes next.
I think I know where this is going, but yeah.
Okay, so it's interesting because Ham becomes a villain here because it says Noah grew a vineyard, made wine, and it says it went to, let's see, he was uncovered in verse 21. It says he was uncovered within his tent, and it's actually a feminine. Uh, the Hebrew there is feminine. It could be in
Into her tent.
yeah, uncovered within her tent.
Oh,
Yeah. So um, at least one interpretation of this is that Noah was in his wife's tent. Okay, and he was drunken. And then it says that Ham, and it mentions again the father of Canaan. This is that like the second time it says Ham was the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father. So there's actually quite a few different theories about what this means. Is it just that Noah was drunken and acting foolishly, although he was in a tent, but he had maybe passed out or something, and Ham just came and like mocked him or something?
which
Or
the text doesn't say, but that is a theory.
yeah, right. And there's other theories too, um, that it has had like some kind of sexual connotation. And actually, I agree. And what kind of sexual act was committed? I think the text actually is very clear because, again, this is an example of things happening before Mount Sinai that actually conform to Sinai. And and I believe that that is the case because those second commandments were given to Adam,
Right.
and they were merely renewed with Noah. Not it wasn't like a new invention then. So what does the phrase mean? Like in the Torah, um,
To uncover your father's nakedness.
yeah, saw the nakedness of his father. Well, that is something that we learn about in Leviticus. chapter 18 and 20. I'm going to read in Leviticus 20, verse 11. And the man that lieth with his father's wife hath uncovered his father's nakedness. Like that is, so like to uncover your father's nakedness is an idiom and like an idiomatic way of
Right.
saying slept with your father's wife, which is not the same thing as your mother
Right.
because um, because your father could have another wife,
Exactly.
could have two wives, or could be divorced and remarried, or widowed and remarried, or whatever.
Well, let's tie this back to what you mentioned earlier. It talks about Japheth. Noah has Japheth.
Yes,
Then Shem is born from her who was the mother of Japheth.
yes,
So
that's
Shem
correct.
and Japheth share a mother, and then it mentions Ham.
Yes,
It just that's
the
very interesting.
secondary, right?
Right.
Yes. So I think so. Just to put it bluntly for our audience here, I believe that what is being described here is a rape of Noah's wife by Ham,
But not Ham's mother.
but not Ham's mother. That's right. Um, and so this is obviously a very serious crime, and I believe that the result of this union, this illicit union, was Canaan, and this is why Canaan is like kind of mentioned with Noah's sons because Noah's wife gave birth to him,
Right.
but it specifically says, but Ham was the father.
Right. So Ham is the biological father, but because it was Noah's wife who possibly gave birth to Canaan,
Right.
that's in a way that is his son.
That's right.
It's a messed up situation.
Messed up. Right.
And this, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I was going to move on to kind of another interpretation. So if you have more to say
I
about
was I
this.
was going to say this. It makes sense that this illicit and disgusting union would result in a priesthood curse.
Right. Yeah. So this is the other kind of weird thing is we read about in this story in Genesis 9 that Ham does this thing to Noah,
He sees his
sees
nakedness.
his nakedness, uncovers his father's nakedness, um, or says saw the nakedness of his father, and then uh and then like it's taken care of, whatever. It's over, it's happened, and then Noah curses Canaan,
Noah curses Ham's son, not
not
Ham.
Ham.
Well,
Yeah,
it's not like Noah's vengefully taking it out on
his grandson.
Ham, yeah, on his grandson. There's a reason for this curse. It's because it was a
Yeah,
corrupt union.
yes, it's because Ham corrupted himself and lost the blessings of the priesthood. Therefore, Ham's children also are cursed um, by Noah. And that's because they have that their line has become degenerate because of Ham, yeah, and lost that blessing. Now, I think the other interpretation that's often or that can be given, and again, I think this is a bit of Hebrew wordplay here, is uncover your nakedness has this like idiomatic meaning.
Another idiomatic meaning.
No, it has the idiomatic meaning of
Oh, okay.
like adultery with your
With your
father's wife,
right,
but it has also a literal meaning. To like uncover his nakedness means to remove his robe or to take his robe.
right.
And I think both of these things happen. And this is Ham wanting to like exert his
To
dominance in the
usurp
family, usurp. Yeah.
usurp authority.
And so he rapes his father's wife and also takes the robe steals the robe, steals the garment of the priesthood that was given to Adam and passed down to Noah. So Ham has it, and Ham flees, um, and departs, and Ham has posterity, and those things are mentioned in the following chapters. But eventually, we come to a descendant of Ham named Nimrod, who is famous. Yeah, you know why is he famous, or what is he famous for?
He was a mighty hunter.
A mighty hunter. Yeah, and so again, why is he such an amazing hunter? Well, he goes out into the forests, into the fields, wearing this garment, and as he goes out, the animals become docile, and so he can take his pick. And so So that's kind of that's the state of the garment of Adam at this point. So now in chapter 10, we go through the the nations and like the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And did you have things you wanted to mention about that?
It's commonly called the Table of Nations, and there are 70 nations listed, and this is just how the peoples of the world are organized at this point.
Okay. Yeah. And that plays into later uses of the number 70,
Okay.
right? Jesus sends out the 70 and there's the 70 elders and so on and of course in the restoration we have the office of 70 and 70 are like what's their job?
They're traveling elders.
They're to go, yeah, and that's because they're to go to the nations. So so this comes from, this is all the way back in Genesis, this idea. So okay, chapter 11 then is the story of the Tower of Babel. So the commandment that God gave to Noah and his sons was to spread out across the earth and multiply it and replenish it. But in Babel, they decide we're not going to do that. We're going to cluster together and we're going to build a tower to get to heaven. And a tower to get to heaven. I mean, this is temple imagery,
Yeah,
right?
clear. This isn't just some random tower. They're building a temple,
Right.
a false temple.
But it's a false temple because they are doing it in wickedness. They are doing it actually in opposition to God's commandment.
Right.
Um,
His law.
yeah, that's right. And they are united under Nimrod as well. This is Nimrod's project.
So Nimrod is a not only a mighty hunter, but a great king,
Yeah, and a tyrant.
a proto-Babylonian king
Right.
and tyrant.
Yeah. Yeah. Babel is the same word as Babylon in the Hebrew. So, but it's just interpreted like when it's translated in English, sometimes they use Babylon for like the later kingdom. So we know the story there. I don't want to say too much about this, but the people are united in their wickedness. Um, God says like nothing is gonna be like they're gonna be able to do anything now once they put their minds to it, so to speak. And God goes down and uh, confounds their tongues and also scatters them. Um, Now there are exceptions to this confounding of the tongues, though, right? We have in the Book of Mormon, um, Jared and his brother,
And their
Morty and
friend
Humor, and their friends, yeah, and their families.
and their honeybees.
Yes, that's right. And there's actually another exception too, which is not recorded in the Book of Mormon, but this is recorded in Jewish stories that one of the descendants of Shem, um, whose name is Eber.
Eber.
Yeah, and it goes like this, starting at verse Genesis chapter 11, verse 10. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years and begat sons and daughters. And Arphaxad lived 530 years and begat Salah. And Arphaxad lived after he begat Salah 400 years. That's 403 years and begat sons and daughters. And Salah lived 30 years and begat Eber. Now, Eber is in English is comes from the word like it could also be translated as Heber.
Hmm.
And this man, Eber or Heber, is the father of the Hebrews.
Because he is an ancestor of Abraham.
That's right. And so everyone who's a descendant of Eber is Hebrew.
Oh, yeah, even if you're not from Abraham's line.
Right, like technically
Right, you were
speaking.
okay.
Okay, so Hebrew is actually in a genealogical sense, Hebrew is bigger than Israelite,
Right.
right? And Israelite is bigger than Jewish, right? So anyway, but the Jewish stories are that Eber also prayed not to have his language confounded, and he spoke
Hebrew.
Hebrew. Yeah, and so I do believe, and some of these puns, like we were talking about, the puns with Adam and Adamah and Dam being the word for blood and earth and man, like all having there's this word play between them, but those are all Hebrew words, and so the fact that this earliest story has has puns in Hebrew, but not in English and not in Greek, is pretty strong evidence that that this story was like meant to be in Hebrew,
Wow,
meaning meaning that Hebrew stretches all the way back to the beginning,
that's wild.
or at least some version of it. Like I'm not going to say that like it's
Uncorrupted.
yeah unscathed or uncorrupted. No,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that that I do believe that the earliest language that humans used was like a Proto Hebrew at least. And so but it's interesting that the Jewish stories there's like a resonance there in the Jewish stories about Eber not having his language confounded, and also the Book of Mormon stories about the Jaredites. So, anything
Fascinating.
else?
No,
Okay, okay. There's more. There's a lot more that could be said about the Tower of Babel, but
right.
we'll save that for another year. So, because we're going to go through this every year, right? How many years are we going to do this?
Till a new heaven
At
and a
least
new
one.
new
Oh,
new heaven and a new earth.
the yeah, till yeah, not one jot or tittle will be
Yeah.
okay.
1,000 years of recording the weekly Torah portion.
Oh man. Okay. Now, this Torah portion ends with the introduction of a very important character, which is uh,
Abram,
Abram, right? Not Abraham. I was going to say Abraham, but I'm glad you said it properly. Abram,
Avram.
Avram. You mentioned when we were talking at the beginning, uh, you're kind of just amazed or like appreciating how much of Genesis is actually devoted to Avram,
Yeah, 40 chapters devoted to Avram or his family.
right? So we go. I mean, we have some pretty big characters here. Um, Adam and oh well, Adam and then Noah, I guess. And we have patriarchs in between, but we kind of go through those guys like pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, few
That
chapters each.
right, right. So um the story really begins we have Abram is first mentioned in verse 26. Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abram and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. So, what this verse is saying, although it's a little bit hard to follow, but Terah has three sons. One of them is Haran, and Haran dies. But Haran has a couple of daughters. One of them is Milcah, and it says uh, Haran has two daughters actually,
So
Milcah and Iscah.
the brother of Abraham has two daughters.
Yes, that's right, Milcah and Iscah, and then he dies, and then Abram's two brothers, um, or sorry, Haran's two brothers, Abram and Nahor. They actually marry Haran's daughters. So Abram marries Sarai and Nahor marries Milcah. So this woman here, Iscah, is actually understood to be another name for Sarai.
Okay.
Okay, and then this is kind of confirmed. Verse 30 says it's interesting because it says Abram's wife was Sarai. And then it says Haran was the father of Milcah and the father of Iscah, but Sarai was barren. So like mentions Iscah and then says, but Sarai was barren.
There's a clear parallelism between Iscah and Sarai.
Right.
Okay.
And then it continues in verse 31. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law. Uh, uh, so his son Abram's wife. And they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go to the land of Canaan. And they came into Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So I just want to point out also that in verse 31, like it says uh, it's kind of a complicated thing, because later on, and we'll get there, later on, Abram says that Sarai is his sister.
Hmm.
But he says, but not, um, eh, but he says, but not the daughter of my mother, but the daughter of my father. And so we get this idea that basically that Abram and Sarai's marriage was incestual,
They were half siblings.
half siblings, yeah, which is forbidden by in Leviticus. So, some people kind of wrestle with this. They're like, oh, well, maybe incest was allowed back then. But um, actually, a careful reading though, is that Sarai is not literally the daughter of Terah, but as it says in verse 31, is his daughter-in-law.
Okay.
So, which is a kind of daughter.
It is a kind of daughter, and she would have been Tara's granddaughter
Yes, right. Also another kind of daughter,
and Abraham's
and
niece.
Abraham's niece.
So in this reading, Abraham is married to his niece,
That's right.
not his half sister.
Right. Which, if you go back to Leviticus, actually is not a
It
violation.
is specifically allowed
Correct.
to for an uncle to marry his niece, but
Yeah,
an aunt to marry her nephew is specifically forbidden.
that's right.
Correct?
Yes, that's right. So specifically forbidden. Um, Actually, I think the aunt marrying her nephew is specifically forbidden, and then the uncle marrying a niece is just not
It
is
not
not forbidden,
not even addressed.
not addressed, meaning
What
it is allowed.
right.
Right.
If that were
Not a
meant
violation.
if that were meant to be specifically forbidden, it would have been enumerated in Torah.
Right. Now, and this is a little bit close for our like modern
Oh
sensibilities.
yeah, people are probably grossed
Like,
out or weirded out right
yeah,
now.
but the point that I'm trying to make here is, um, not that I like think this is not that I would like marry my niece or something, or that I recommend that. What I'm saying is that, Abram and Sarai are just like we talked about, Noah and Adam and Abel, like
And
all.
Alma and
And
Amulek.
yeah, all keeping laws that were found in the Torah. We find the same thing here.
They're all keeping the same set of laws,
Yeah.
the same
Yeah,
law.
they are actually, it's not that Abram gets a special pass and he's like violating what would become a commandment later. He's actually not violating any commandment. He's actually keeping the laws that would come later because those are the laws that were in uh in force at the time.
We've talked about these renewed covenants several times. Each dispensation is a renewal of the same covenant, the everlasting covenant. I don't think I don't think I explicitly made this connection though. The same covenant carries with it the same law. So those second
Right.
commandments given to Adam and Eve would have been renewed in every dispensation as part of the everlasting covenant.
Yeah.
So if we didn't clearly say that, then there it is now.
Okay. Amen. Well, that brings us to the end of the Torah portion.
Okay, I have some things to say to finish this
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
So this portion ends with Abraham and his family, his father and nephew and living brother getting out of Dodge because does it mention famine?
It doesn't.
Okay. Well, it shows them leaving,
Yes.
departing. Well, Abraham in the Pearl of Great Price, Abraham 1 and 2 give more context to this part of the story. So I'm just going to do a very quick overview of what has happened before they get out of town here
Okay.
at the end of chapter
It was
11.
a very nice tie-in.
Right. So again, Abraham 1 and the beginning of Abraham 2 map onto the end of Genesis 11. So let's fill out.
Part of the Torah portion.
Yes, it
Okay.
essentially is. I
Right.
mean, let's fill out the story a little bit. So before they leave, Abram sought greater priesthood. He had patriarchal priesthood, but he was seeking just by lineage. He had patriarchal priesthood conferred upon him. Uh, but patriarchal priesthood is lesser than a fullness of Melchizedek priesthood. So Abraham is seeking after this fullness of priesthood, this Melchizedek priesthood. And it says Abraham is a follower, or Abram at this point. It says Abram is a follower of righteousness. And he preaches repentance to his people, including his father, because they are worshiping false gods and
Mm.
they are engaging in idol worship, essentially. Well, because of this, they aren't too happy with Abram's preaching, so he is laid on the altar. And while on the altar, he has a vision of Yahovah. And as he's on the altar, God gives Abram promises of land and greater priesthood. And then he brings Abram into covenant relationship with him. And specifically, it says, it mentions how God tells Abram he's bringing him into a covenant similar to what was given to Noah. So this is a renewal of that covenant given to Noah,
Mm.
essentially. It's the next dispensation.
Mm.
Um, but here's an added blessing. It says that through Abram's ministry, the God of Israel will be known throughout all nations forever and ever.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen. And then, so after Abraham or Abram has this remarkable vision and is received into covenant relationship with God, God slays the priest who's about to sacrifice Abram, and then Haran dies, and Abram and Lot are led out of the land by God, and then Terah follows after them.
Mm.
So it's not as if they're bringing Terah with them because Terah was a part of Abram being laid on the altar.
All right.
So Terah follows after them, you know. Seems like he repents
He's
of his.
kind of like a reluctant villain or something.
Yeah, a
Sarah.
reluctant villain.
He's like a
That's funny.
or just he's just kind of spineless. Like he's not he wouldn't be bad unless uh like the king is like commanding him
Right.
to do things, right? He
Social
doesn't
pressure.
have a spine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Social pressure. He lives in an idolatrous culture, and Abram is kicking against the bricks in that
Mm.
way.
Hmm.
And yeah, spineless. I like that.
It's interesting. Some of the like extra canonical stories, like again in Jasher, like they mention because you mentioned like promises similar to Noah being given to Abram.
Yes.
But these other stories, like they mention after Abram like fleeing, like he gets like tutored by Noah and Shem.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, there's a connection.
yeah, interesting.
All right, folks. Well, we appreciate your time and shalom.
Shalom.